one of the frequent questions that county home economists get about this time of year about home canning deals with what kind of sugar syrup should I use for my fruits. I'm either diabetic or someone in my family is, and so I want to cut back on the amount of sugar. I just want to watch calories, or I just don't want a lot of sugar in there. Now, the sugar in sugar syrups that are used for canning fruits does do something besides just add sweetness. It helps retard color change, it helps with firmness, it helps retain nutrients in the fruit because the fruit stays intact better. So you may not want to completely go to water. One of the things it also does is it affects how the fruit sits in the jar. We also get a lot of questions on why does my fruit float? I packed it well and whatnot. If your syrup is too heavy, meaning it has too much sugar in it, you're much more apt to get floating fruit. Now, I've developed a little experiment here, and we'll see if this works. This jar contains just water. This one contains an exaggerated sugar syrup. This is more than you would use for home canning. It's about a 70% syrup, which means it's 70% sugar and 30% water when you start mixing it up. Now, in the one that's just water, we're going to drop a couple of nectarine halves. That will sink to the bottom because there's not a lot of sugar in there, and it's going to go on down. Now, this one, it floats because the concentration of sugar is so high that even if I push it down so that it's not like a little boat anymore, it's going to stay up towards the top. If you're having a lot of trouble with floating fruit, you may be using fruit that's overripe, and there's some other things that may be happening. You may not be packing it tight enough, but this is one of the common causes, using syrup that's too heavy. So look at the recipes in the canning guide and choose one that's lighter. Now, we have several alternatives, anywhere from a 50% syrup for fruits that are very, very tart, like pie cherries or very tart apples, and you can go all the way down to canning with just water. The detractions from canning with just water, however, is that you get the edges of the fruit broken up a lot. The water around it tends to go into the fruit because of osmosis and causes the cells within the fruit itself to explode. And not only does that make it look ragged around the edges, but also the flavor and the sugars and the vitamins and minerals that were in the fruit then go into the water. And you probably will not use that water, and so it's lost to you. So you may not want to go to just plain water unless you're diabetic or have some reason besides just general flavor reasons in order that you're wanting to change. Now, one of the things that you can do, a couple of alternatives. You can use bottled juices such as white grape juice or a light apple juice. Those, however, can be fairly expensive if you're going to can very many things. The better alternative would be, again, to go to your county office and get the home canning guide if you don't have one. It has a recipe for a very light juice, which is about 10% sugar, and that's about the same amount of sugar that you'd find in those juices that I just mentioned, but it's a lot less expensive because you just use regular sugar to make it, and you can have it available when you're ready. It also doesn't have the flavors that apple juice and white grape juice do, which will particularly affect mild flavored fruits such as apples and peaches and nectarines and things like that. Another question that we get very often is, we want to use artificial sweeteners. Can we do that? The answer is yes, you can, but you don't put them in the jar when you put the fruit in. You go ahead and can with just water if that's your alternative. Follow the procedures for doing that, hot packing and processing at the recommended time. And when you're ready to serve, you add the artificial sweetener at that point. Reason being that the two different kinds of artificial sweeteners that are most common will not hold up during the long processing time for fruits. So that if you add the saccharin-based artificial sweeteners, when you open those jars, they're going to be very, very bitter and usually not acceptable for eating. And if you use the aspartame-based sweeteners, you're going to find that they completely lose their sweetness and they don't do anything for you at all. Doesn't hurt you, but it doesn't make them sweet either. So you can in water and add those when you're ready to eat. Sugar syrups are a benefit. They don't have to have as much sugar as the heavy syrups that we often grew up with, but they do help protect the product while it's in storage and during the canning process. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.